Hello, my name is Nadia Denton. I am an author, a film curator, and impact producer based in the UK. I've been working in the film industry for up to 15 years, mainly showcasing work of the African diaspora. In the last 6 years, I've turned my interest to Nigeria, and I have an event and a collective called Beyond Nollywood. Beyond Nollywood takes inspiration from a book that I wrote in 2014 called The Nigerian Filmmaker's Guide to Success. So over the course of this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how you can use social impact to promote the content and the agendas and messaging that you may have in documentaries and advocacy related films that you may be considering making or that you have already made. So the title of the presentation is called 10 Tips on Social Impact for Your Film. So to start off with, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what social impact is. So social impact really is when you as a creative and as a filmmaker decide that you want to make content that is going to have some kind of impact on your audiences in some social form. So this could be educating them about a particular topic. It could be to advocate on something that's happened or that you think is important. And also it could be to sensitize them to a political issue or something that might be happening in your society that you feel that they should be aware of. Typically, social impact films might either be in the documentary form or they can be narrative feature films. They may have strong issues that would relate to very particular audiences. And normally these issues would be anything to do with the betterment or improvement of a society, given culture, or even to shine a spotlight on issues or challenges or problems that a given society or culture may have, and broadly to raise awareness. Essentially, social impact really is about capturing the hearts and minds of your audience. So it's really using the audio-visual form to try and shift people's perceptions or to encourage them to have a particular view about a given issue that may have some positive impact on the society that you're targeting or you're looking at as a whole. So just to give you an example, in recent months, I have been impact producing a Nigerian art house film called For Maria Ibun Pataki. This narrative feature was made by a young director called Damalola Arimogunje. He's based in Lagos, and he, a few years ago, decided that he wanted to make a film looking at postpartum depression. So in this particular film, he has created a narrative which, whilst engaging for audiences and allows them to understand how an individual might suffer and go through elements of depression or mental health decline, it also has a very strong message about challenging people to think about how they see mental health, how they see depression, and how at times we as individuals in our cultures and our societies can be dismissive of conditions that actually can have quite a devastating impact. So in a nutshell, social impact really is about capturing the hearts and minds of your audience through the work that you might put in a film, but also more specifically through a number of actions and activities, which I'm going to go on to talk about. So why might social impact be important? This I appreciate for some of you watching, maybe the first time you're hearing about social impact. And certainly you may be thinking, well, I want to make a film. I just want to get known. I perhaps want a bit of fame, want to make money. But as we know, increasingly, many films don't necessarily get the audiences they want. They don't necessarily bring the return on investment, and they don't necessarily go out to engage as wide an audience as the producers may have originally wanted. So social impact really is a way of you being able to extend the shelf life of your film. And this is one of the reasons why it's important. Social impact in terms of an actual active campaign can mean that the contents of your film will go much further and have a longer shelf life and longer period of engagement by audiences than if you were just to have a commercial release. So social impact, besides being a means to engage a wider audience, is also important in terms of your own values and, reasoning for perhaps becoming a filmmaker and making films. It could be that you are someone who wants to make content that is going to change people, that is perhaps going to improve them, that will educate them, and that will have some impact in the society. And so for this reason, you may regard social impact as being quite key and something that you would want to do as part of your work in promoting and releasing your film. You also may be very committed to a particular cause, a particular charity. You may want to highlight a particular event that's happened in the past, and you feel that in embarking on a social impact campaign, you can use the contents of your film to do this. You also can enhance the commercial ambitions of your film through a well-executed impact campaign. So certainly, if your impact is successful, it will mean that you have larger audiences who've engaged with the content. It will mean that you perhaps have secured press. You may have secured partnerships and alliances. And all of these things are going to help to get more eyeballs and more interest in the work, which potentially could mean that you are able to maximize the commercial output for the film. So these are some of the reasons why social impact is important and why you should certainly consider it if you are making a documentary that deals with an issue that you think can, convert people, change hearts and minds, or at least can serve to stimulate and educate the audiences who might be watching it. So I'm now going to go through 10 key areas or points or suggestions that I think would be significant in terms of you rolling out in a social impact campaign, and also to maximize the potential of a given social impact campaign. So firstly, you are going to need an individual to lead your social impact campaign. I know there'll be a lot of directors watching this thinking that they're going to do the social impact campaign themselves. And certainly I would recommend that they be heavily involved in it. But it is important to have an individual that is going to be able to lead this campaign and bring some energy to the efforts that probably you as a director, having recently directed the film and put it through post-production, etc., may not have the energy for. So in the absence of getting a bespoke impact producer, I would suggest that you identify a resourceful producer, film producer, ideally, who you think has the kind of energy and the dynamism and the interest in your subject matter and what you're wanting to do, and is willing to dedicate the time and energy to doing so. Ideally, you want an individual who is very passionate about the subject for which you want to advocate or to bring more awareness to, and also someone who is imaginative and has ideas about how you can usefully get the messaging out to audiences. The individual that you work with doesn't necessarily have to be someone who is hugely experienced in impact production, but certainly their enthusiasm and their interest in what you're doing and their willingness to go the long road with the content is going to be key. So point one is to appoint an individual, ideally a producer, who's going to lead your impact campaign and who's going to be able to bring an energy to it that you, perhaps as a director, or even the crew who's worked on the film, may not be able to bring at that critical stage once the film is complete. Secondly, you're going to need to work with your producer to devise an impact campaign plan. So I wouldn't advise you to set about your campaign unless you have devised some kind of plan. Plan doesn't need to be anything particularly sophisticated or detailed. It just needs to be a sketch outline of what it is that you want to achieve with your impact campaign. So the plan should include key things like the timescales that you might be working to. So ideally, your impact campaign would lead up to perhaps the date you're going to release a film, or a particular event, or even a date in the calendar that you might want to mark that has some relevance to what you're promoting or what you're advocating for. You also want to outline the activities that the impact campaign is going to consist of. So it could be a number of things that you're doing to get broader interest. It could be that you are contacting key individuals in the film industry or in a particular industry or area that is related to the subject matter through telephone calls and through emails to let them know about the film and to try and solicit their support. It could be that as part of your activities, you are going to engage in some private or informal screenings, and you would need to be looking at which communities you wanted to target. Certainly, if you are going to do preview screenings, you'd be looking at engaging a group of individuals who are going to help you to promote the film. They might be influencers, or they may be key stakeholders who, upon seeing the film, will be able to support your efforts. It could be that also you are looking at doing a press blitz, so contacting whether it's print press or TV or even social media advocates and influencers. It could also be that you might be looking at, say, having a charity gala. There are different ways in which you might be wanting to get the film out. So your impact plan should include all of the activity that you ideally would like to carry out. And obviously, it should all be broken down according to your resources and your budget. Typically, I've worked on social impact campaigns where there's little to no budget. So we've always had to tailor the activities to suit what we have. So definitely look at what are the resources, what can you afford to do, and what's going to be realistic in terms of the timescales. And then lastly, in terms of your impact campaign plan, you need to consider what it is that you really want to achieve and get out of the actions. So it's good to be as specific as possible. It could be that you identify a number of international press pieces that you want to get. It could be that you identify that you want to get endorsement from a particular organization or organizations. It could be that you have a certain number of audiences that you want to ensure that some of the content, whether it's the whole film or clips of the film, has been seen by. You need to think and sit with your creative team and decide what would be the most effective outcomes that are going to help you to get the messaging of your film across both in the short and the long term. So thirdly, you need to identify themes in the film that you are going to be having as central to your impact campaign. So as I mentioned earlier, I've recently been working on the art house film For Maria Ibn Pataki, which looks at postpartum depression and mental health. So clearly in that instance, the mental health element was the most significant. And that was quite a clear theme that we knew that we were going to be putting forward as part of the social impact campaign. But there were also other themes that I was keen that we would bring to the fore, so that when we were positioning the film and trying to get interest, that we could try and spread the interest as broadly as possible, so that individuals who may not have immediately been engaged by mental health may have been engaged by other themes. So the other themes that I drew out from what I could see of the film and what the director was trying to do was firstly the style of the film that he was making. And I'm very much a champion of Nigerian directors who are trying to develop new forms and develop storytelling in new styles. And in this case, I could see he was clearly making an art house film, which is quite unusual in the Nigerian space, particularly when a lot of directors are encouraged to make more commercial type films. So as part of the impact campaign, we were highlighting the fact that in addition to the mental health issues that were raised in the film, we also had a young Nigerian director who was making a bold art house film for the first time. This was his debut feature film, and also the fact that it's rare to have art house films coming from Nigeria. So that was one of the other themes. So it's important when you are looking at how you're going to package the presentation of the issues that you want to advocate for, that you're not single-minded in just choosing maybe one or two themes. Try and look more broadly at the film and the proposition that the director and the creative team are giving, and see how that can be pulled together to get as much broad interest as possible. So fourthly, you also need to pinpoint a slogan or some kind of rallying point that people will be able to hook onto in terms of the social impact messaging of your film and of the campaign. So for instance, in the case of For Maria Ibn Pataki, in addition to the fact that we were highlighting a need for people to be more aware about mental health, about depression and postpartum depression, we also were flagging up the importance of this issue at this time. So clearly, we've had a very severe COVID pandemic, and also in recent months, we've seen movements from Black Lives Matter to end SARS. So we, in our press release and our write-up, were highlighting the fact that this was a film of its time because it not only presented mental health, which is something that a lot of people have been struggling with under the COVID pandemic and under lockdown, but it also was a brave, new presentation of looking at the more global Black experience. And in this case, we have a depressed mother of one living in Lagos. And the film was presenting, a character who perhaps we haven't really seen so much in terms of, international storytelling. So really important to distill and think about what could be a one-line slogan or rallying point for people to be engaged or involved beyond the theme of the film. And in this case, with the For Maria, the slogan or the rallying call was really about it being a film of its time, a film that could help audiences to contextualize not just the mental health element, but also where we are as a world, as a society, as a culture, etc. So fifthly, it's really important in terms of your social impact campaign that you have a clear understanding of who your target audience is going to be. So not every person on the street is going to be an audience for your film. And certainly if you have made a film that advocates for a particular social issue, a health issue, a political issue, or whatever it might be that you've selected, there's likely to be a very specific audience for this work. You will waste your energies if you try to just do a blanket approach and assume that everyone is going to be interested. You'll be much better off breaking down who you think is going to be the specific audience and looking at how you can target them. So for instance, with For Maria, Ibn Pataki, it was quite clear that there were very particular audiences who would be interested in this film. So that was mothers who may well have had a difficult childbirth, women who had suffered from either postpartum depression or even depression, husbands or family members who had to support loved ones who may have had postpartum depression. We were also looking at individuals who enjoy art house cinema or who enjoy world cinema or are interested in Nigerian culture, and then also individuals in the medical field. So ranging from psychiatrists, psychologists, to midwives and nurses, individuals who may, for medical or professional reasons, be engaging with issues around postpartum depression or depression, and as such would be interested in this kind of narrative. So those really were the key three audiences that we were looking at and targeting. And it meant that it was much easier when we were thinking about who we should contact to try and get endorsement and support from across the board. We could break down who might be more interested in the subject matter over others. So really key before you start out, and again, this is something that should be included in your social impact plan, is to think about who are the likely people who are going to want to come to see the film, or who can be engaged around the messaging in the film. And the more that you're able to distill that and break it down, the more likely that you're going to find you will be able to pick out advocates within those communities who are prepared to take forward the messaging and to, if you like, pass on the baton to start advocating on your behalf within their communities, amongst their networks, for people to engage with the film. Sixthly, it's really important that you look at securing partnerships. So this could be individuals, organizations, or groups who have a vested interest in the given subject that you are supporting and promoting, and who would be prepared to get involved, to get on board, and to bring their resources to bear. If it is the case that you are embarking on your social impact campaign with a small budget, you're definitely going to need as many hands on deck as possible. So you're really going to try to identify who it might be that has a soft spot for this given issue and who is prepared to go over and beyond in their support of your efforts with the film, with this issue. So again, when you have been able to identify who those audiences are, it should help you to think about associations and bodies who likewise would have a vested interest in supporting this topic. So as part of your research, you're going to need to look at how you can amass contact details and do a bit of informal research as well amongst people within your networks to find out who they think might be individuals who might be advocates or leaders within their particular groups that can help you to identify the right people and to be able to cascade these messages down. Part of your partnership building will also include other industry practitioners who can bring resources and who may have an interest in the content or what you're doing. So for instance, with the For Maria Impact campaign that I've been leading, we were able to get the support of 2 PR agencies. So one of them was an individual who was able to give us support off her own back. And then we were also able to engage an organization called Organic PR. And the reason that they decided to come on board is, one, they had committed to doing pro bono work with small productions, but also they were very interested in the subject matter, and the lead PR very much is a supporter and fan of African cinema. And so she very much identified with the fact of this being a rare narrative from West Africa. So you'll be surprised at the kind of interest and support and partnerships that you can get just by putting the word out from sources you may not be expecting, who may have an interest in what you're doing over and beyond just the themes that you're presenting. But it could be that they have an investment in you as an individual, as a filmmaker, and feel that the messaging you're trying to put out is really key. So I'm definitely a big advocate of filmmakers and in this instance, impact producers, compiling all evidences of what they've done and what's worked or perhaps not worked, and having that as something tangibly that can be recorded and passed on to other stakeholders. So that brings us to the end of the 10 tips in terms of leading a social impact campaign for your film. I hope that the information that I've imparted can be of some use. I certainly think that Nigeria is at a very critical point in its history. And more than ever, I think our public, our audiences, and even the international community really need to understand what's happening in the country and in the culture. And certainly, embarking on effective social impact campaigns can be a way of helping that. I hope that some of you who are very interested in the subject will take the time to maybe do a bit of research online to look at international examples of social impact campaigns that have really gone well. Sky's the limit when you're thinking about bringing social change, whether it's converting, the neighbor next door, or whether it's, changing the minds of people who know nothing about your culture or your society, but who through seeing your work have a different point of view. So through social impact, it's one of the most significant ways that you can exert your power as a creative and as a filmmaker to, impart really important messages and to make the world a better place to live in, really. So I wish you all well in your creative endeavors. And certainly for those of you who want to find out more about me, you can go to my website, which is www.nadiadenton.com. So that's NADIADENTON. On my website, I've got information about Beyond Nollywood, and I certainly would love to hear from some of you if you have content that you would be interested in sharing, or if you just want to engage and find out a bit more, you can contact me via the contact page on my website. So I wish you all the best. I hope that you will stay safe in these difficult times, and I look forward to the social impact campaigns that can come in the future. Goodbye.